Wow, do I feel dumb? I guess I should learn by now to check my videos before I post them up that there's actually sound on them. Thank you, Faran, for pointing that out. Um, Shoot, you know how when you do a video, excuse me, and it just flows and you get all the right things and it seems to capture right, and then you have to go back and do it over again? Well, fortunately for me, it never flows just right because there were a handful of things when I did this first video or this first take, that I didn't remember or was having to keep checking my notes on and that sort of thing. But so here we are again. Okay, so session 2, recap number 2. Oh, session 2, chapter 1, a baboon hunt in the Chronicles of Carreen, my RQG or Runequest Roleplaying in Glorantha campaign. Run online using Google Hangouts. We did capture the video for the first hour and a half before we had a catastrophic tech failure, which I believe was an issue on my part, since it turns out that my two sons were playing Fortnite and apparently were sucking all the bandwidth out of my connection. So yeah, my older son's gone off to back to college. My younger son will not be playing tonight because we're going to play again tonight, which is why I had to get this video fixed, because if my audio's not working, we're going to have all kinds of problems tonight. But anyway, session 2 begins where session 1 ended, oddly enough, at the festival, not feast, the feast at the Sundong Temple in the Great Hall there, after the capture of the murderer of the Glover. Lots of ofs there. So it turns out that the murderer, Darwin, I think his name was. I'd have to look back through my notes or watch the video of it even. Which holidays really sucked at my time, or I would have had this thing out much earlier. Anyway, the murderer, it turns out, was a follower of Ermal, the trickster, and he claimed protection from Orlanth, or protection by Orlanth. And Lorand, the lieutenant to the light captain of the temple, comes up to the feast, and at this point, everybody's gone, leaving their stories out and talking about things. So it's calmed down in some parts of the hall. Other parts of the hall, the volume's gone up because everybody's been drinking. And Lorand comes up, and he comes over to the table where the party is. And he's right across from Callan, and he says, can you believe it? He's a loon and trickster. It's kind of funny because when I said that, some of the party members thought I meant a lunar trickster. Lunar being Lunar Empire, bad guys, that kind of thing. And so they're trying to piece together, why are there lunars here, and what are they doing this, and what do they care about no chat and uprisings and stuff. And so I had to stop and clarify that Lorand was in fact using Lunan as an expletive. So yeah, it turns out he is a trickster. He invoked the protection of Orlanth. So while they did have a sort of mock down there to make sure he was telling the truth, at that point they brought in a Windlord of Orlanth to take over. It turns out that the story they got from Derween, something like that. The murderer was that he had come to the Trade Time Festival like everybody else. And he spotted a guy here who he knew was a spy for this cult in the underground of Nochet. And this underground cult was trying to make an uprising or an insurrection. And they had plans to take over the government, right? And the cult that this guy, the murderer, belongs to, not Ermal specifically, but some kind of associate cult kind of thing, excuse me, has been in conflict with this other cult. And so he went to the Glover tried to get some information out of him because he knew that somebody was passing information through him, and that's why he was here. And since he couldn't get any information out of him, he just killed him to cut the information flow. He can't pass it on to whoever he's supposed to pass it on if he's dead, right? Or if he hadn't gotten the information yet, he couldn't collect it and then pass it on. So he cut that information chain, and that was his justification for the murder. I'm not sure exactly how well the Orlanthe folks are going to deal with that just yet. That's something I'll figure out later on in my head. But so that's the situation going on. He comes up and they're talking about everything that they found out and all that kind of stuff. And then Lorand asked Colin, hey, were you able to find anything about this baboon? Were you able to find out where he's from or what was going on or what he saw or what part he may have had in? And so they took, okay, we got back and find out what's going on with this baboon. Also had two other things happening at this time. Shaking the table, sorry. with the party, because there were two. There were two members of the party who were both shaman, and I had as part of the background. They both were assistant shamans to the shaman who was supporting clan lands that Colin's father is the head of. Well, these two magic user guys were both trying to play a magic user, right? And so they had discussed amongst themselves about somebody actually trying to be a Lancromai sorcerer. So one of them, Cars, played by Bruce, they decided that he would go ahead and swap out and bring in a Lancromai philosopher sorcerer, right? And so Bruce and I worked on and off over a week on how to actually develop a sorcerer, because the more and more I looked into it, the more and more it looked like, why would anybody in the world want to be a sorcerer? There's absolutely no power here whatsoever. And I'll do another video on that later. But we worked out some things, and he got a certain plan of what he wanted to try and come across as, and how we could make the structure of sorcery actually work so it had some kind of value to the party. So in order to get Cars out and Lars in, he's the philosopher, sorcerer, we had a swap out happen, and it was no big deal. I just simply had the shaman send a runner to go and get Cars and bring him back because he needed him for some spirit world investigation thing he's doing. Needed some help. Come home. So that runner actually shows up at the feast that night, and so Cars is out of the picture. Next morning, everybody gets up. I had figured that Colin's father, realizing that Colin may be in over his head with this whole investigation thing, especially since he's dealing with rune lords and rune priests, that kind of thing, figured he could probably use some help. And he had some connections in Clearwine with the Lancromai temple there, and made contact with Lars to help his son out with what's going on. So Lars shows up at Colin's tent, bang, 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 hey, I'm here to introduce myself. Your father asked me to come and help. I'm so and so, and that kind of thing. And I had developed a couple of seed points, just internally myself on how this whole transition, getting rid of the shaman, getting the sorcerer in was going to work. And I had meant to give those to Bruce, but had failed to do so prior to the game. And so when we got to that point in the role playing, I kind of handed over to Bruce. He's left him in the dark going, okay, introduce yourself. Why are you here? That kind of thing. So he did really well with that, though. He pulled it off, and I threw a couple of bones to him while we were online. And it, made it all match and happen. So everybody finishes having breakfast, and they say, okay, we've got to figure out what's going on with this baboon. So they go back out to where they lost the tracks. And so they start following, okay, the tracks came into the southeast corner. Yeah, southeast corner of Tent City, going south. So they start going through the tents there, seeing if anybody's up yet, talking to people. And through part of their investigation, they found a lady who had heard noises that morning. She feared it was just dogs or something, animals of some sort. But they were heading south. Didn't think anything of it. Okay, so they start heading to they continue south to the edge of Tent City, so the southwest corner of Tent City now, or they're heading that direction. Trying to make some tracking rolls, that kind of thing. And Colin realizes there's no way we're going to be able to do this with our tracking skills, but there's got to be somebody here who's got some decent tracking skills. So he goes to the leather workers' quarter, finds some guys who are dealing in the raw product, furs and that kind of thing, skins. Finds a gentleman who has a son who's a decent tracker and is available because there's working there. So he pays him off, gets the boy, and he meets up with the rest of the party there in the southwest corner of Tent City, trying to find tracks what they can. And the boy finds a trail, and so they follow this. And about a quarter mile so out, there's a stream moving through the grasslands there. And along the stream, there are some bushes and trees and stuff. But there's this one rather large tree that kind of stands out, dominates the area. And sure enough, the trail is heading right towards that tree. So they head over that tree, do some investigation around it, and they spot a baboon up in the tree. And so they try to lure him down with some food. They try to do some empathic kind of communication, here, help, that kind of thing. And did you see something in the city, kind of thing, trying to make some kind of communication, because the baboons just have beast speech, and nobody in the party has beast speech. So while this is going on, Colin realizes we need somebody who speaks beast speech. And so he sends the boy back to get a hold of Lorand and see if he can find somebody who can speak beast speech with these baboons. The boy has the mobility. He's got mobility spell, and so he casts it on himself. Off he goes. And so while the boy is off getting help, they continue to try to communicate with the baboon. The baboon does come down, eats a little bit, that kind of thing. Seems a little wary, but not really aggressive or offensive in any matter. And at some point, they offer some more food and that kind of thing, and they realize that there's a second baboon up there, a younger one. And he starts to come down the tree when he sees the more food, but the big baboon grabs him by the arm, throws him back up the tree, and then squawks at him. Tell him to stay in his place, that kind of thing. So they continue to try and develop relationships of trust and communicate in some kind of manner. Did you see the murder? Stab in the back, dead person, that kind of thing. Back in the city, that kind of thing. The temple. While they're doing this at the party, the boy comes back with a Yinkin follower who speaks beast speech. And so they get to actually speak with the baboon at this point. It's not 100%, but still they get decent communication going across. And they're asking questions and they're getting some answers. But when they ask about what the baboon was doing on the temple, the big baboon gets really defensive and upset. And at that, the baboon screeches up to the other baboon something. The little baboon dashes down the tree and tears off across the grasslands. Colin, at this point, asks the boy to cast mobility on him so he can take off after the baboon and try and keep up with it. Or actually, he thinks, surpass it at this point. However, the baboon actually also has mobility. So they're both tearing across the grasslands. Somebody makes a throw at the little baboon, either a sling or a javelin. I don't remember at this point. And at that, the big baboon freaks. And he throws a spear at whoever had attacked the little baboon, and he starts to attack. So melee is on. So everybody else gets involved with the melee. Of course, there's 4 of them and just the one baboon, so they're able to take him out fairly quickly. I believe it was a limb wound, incapacitated, that kind of deal. But they heal him up. And the Yinkin cultist is going to take him back to Lorand and everybody else. But the baboon says, just kill me now, I have failed in my task. And he relates that to the rest of the party. So the rest of the party is kind of getting confused about what's going on here. Excuse me. Man. So Yinkin and the boy go back to town with the baboon, see if they can't get more information out of him. The rest of the party starts heading across the grasslands to where Colin had chased the little baboon. Well, Colin had followed the little baboon well past the 5 minutes that the mobility spell lasts. But the baboon gets to cast it again because he knows that spell. So he's taken off, and at that point, Colin there's these hills that are out there. And he gets close enough to the hills, and he saw that the baboon disappeared in some of the underbrush. As he gets up closer to it, he tries to sneak around sideways through the underbrush to see if he can't figure out where the baboon had gone. He casts, I want to say, detect enemies again, since he knows this little baboon now. And he detects a presence up in a cave up in the hill. In fact, there are 2 cave entrances. I believe once he gets up there, you can see him. But he's not going to go into the cave by himself. So he crawls back out and heads back across the country. Party meets up together. They discuss what's going on. He tells them about the 2 cave entrances, and that baboon went into one of them. So the whole party gets up there. At that point, he does not detect enemies anymore. So they get up into the cave. That's, couple of meters wide at the opening kind of thing, and then it opens up a little wider and continues for about 50 meters. It's dropping in some distance, sloping down. Of course, it's dark in there. So they cast light on somebody's shield, and somebody else has a torch, and they go down. And at this point, Colin casts, I believe it's Passage Watch, which is a rune spell that we had discussed previously, because he was thinking, if we do dungeon delving and have this dungeon hallway, is that considered a path for the spell? Because a path that about dangers along its pathway. And we agreed, yeah, I would. So he does that, and sure enough, he can detect some danger behind them and off to the east, I think it is, and then 7 up in front of them for another, I think it was like 75 meters, something like that. Well, they get down the bottom of the slope, and they also hear some water dropping. Get down the bottom of the slope, and sure enough, there is an underground lake there, or pool, pond. It was, good 20 meters across at least. So they had no idea how deep it was. So they kind of, reach out, see how deep it is, and it's not too deep where they are, but they can tell it's sloping off. In fact, it probably stayed on the same grade that the trail or the cave itself was on. But it is cold, real cold. And so I had developed some rule modifications that if you fell into this water, you're going to be at these kind of modifiers afterwards to the effects of the cold water. Now I find there is a ledge, and there's a path. Sure enough, you can see tracks, baboon tracks, and these other critter tracks moving across this ledge along one side of the cave, and it goes above and across the underwater lake. Not too dangerous. I had them just roll once on a climbing roll, and if they were to fumble that roll, they would have gone to the water. Otherwise, if it had been just a failure, they just would take them longer to get across, which means they have to make another roll. In which case, if they do get a fumble, then they fall. That kind of thing. But they all get across. They did some help action, that kind of stuff, to help each other across, that kind of deal. No real issues. Everybody gets across. And once they get across, this Passage Watch thing tells them, hey, these guys are coming coming towards you. They're coming around this way. J-hook on you. So they get ready for combat. Colin actually kind of jumps forward and to the north to try and hide in shadows off in the corner, kind of thing, against the wall, to try and take whoever's coming by surprise from the rear, kind of deal. But these are rock lizards. They can smell everybody. So 2 of the rock lizards went for Colin. Everybody else went for the rest of the party. Combat ensues. There was some spell casting into melee that I should have treated like missile fire. I believe it was a disruption spell. But being tied in combat, didn't think about it. So they end up taking, because once you get, below limb, you're incapacitated, you can heal, and you're an animal. What are you going to do? Just kind of crawl away, right? So they're taking the rock lizards down fairly quick, although one of them is able to take the sorcerer down. I think it was an abdomen shot, or a couple of them. Put him down. So when the party member comes over to heal him, well, they continue to fight. But eventually, all of the rock lizards are down, and that's where we ended the session. The whole thing was close to 3.5, 4 hours, but I was only able to capture the first hour, hour and a half with my screen capture software because of that catastrophic tech failure we had. We got back on using Skype to continue playing, but I wasn't able to record off the Skype. But we won't worry about that. But that happened much, much earlier. Most of the fight and stuff was in the second piece. So the session ends. The party had just finished eliminating the rock lizards. Now that I think about it, some of them would be crawling away. There are also some baby, young rock lizards back there that are gonna freak out or run off or hide or something. But they haven't come across the baboons yet. So that's what we will start tonight. Is okay. The rock lizards fighting is over. You got the rock lizards that are crawling off. Some trying to get up onto the thing. Some just crawling back the way they came. What are you gonna do? Meanwhile, they sent their only beast speech speaker back to the temple, so they're gonna be incommunicado again. We'll see how well that works out for them. But anyway, that's take 2 of session 2, chapter 1, a baboon hunt in the Chronicles of Carreen. Happy gaming.